Hello everyone, my name is Mark Zecca. I'm the chairman of the proposed HPOZ for Miracle Mile, which stands for Historical Preservation Overlay Zone. And here to my left is Robby O'Donnell, who's on the HPOZ board for Wilshire Park, which is also part of two other HPOZ areas known as the triplets. Hello, Robby.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
Good, good. And I'll be asking Robby a few questions for you regarding what it means to live in a historical preservation overlay zone. And this pamphlet, HPOZ Living, is put out by the city on what's it like, with a few questions about some people's concerns about living in a historical preservation overlay zone. They've also put out a wonderful book called Caring for Your Historical Homes. And so we're going to begin now and ask Robby some of the more important questions that people have been asking me about living in a historical preservation overlay zone. Robby, so define what an HPOZ is.
HPOZ is a historic preservation overlay zone, and what it does is it gets a neighborhood together as a district that has something in common, either an architect or a social movement or planning or development, something that makes it cohesive and worth preserving.
So it's a combination of historical architecture, the history, the people that have lived here that make it significant to create an HPOZ zone.
Yes, it's not just social or physical, it's both.
It's both.
Yes.
Okay. So I understand you've been working on our historical survey. One of the things that's important for the process of creating a historical preservation overlay zone. And I was reading the report and I was fascinated that this area is significant and most of its growth was between the 1920s and 1953?
Yes.
Okay. And is it true that mostly in the 1920s really was the biggest growth?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The 20s was a big building boom throughout Los Angeles for many reasons. The post-war era was just huge in Los Angeles.
Like, what did you see coming through when the Miracle Mile was being formed? Maybe you could go into that a little bit about the background of how this area came to be.
Well, Miracle Mile itself along Wilshire was developed as an alternative to people who had been excluded from the downtown area. And so it was natural that once the commercial area started to develop, that the residential area would develop as well. And so people began building houses either for themselves or for spec, meaning that they would build it intending to make a profit on it either by renting or by selling. You know, some of the owners never even occupied the homes.
Oh, interesting.
And that's pretty much how most of Los Angeles developed in the 20s. Most neighborhoods are a combination of single-family homes that were custom built for the owners and spec houses that were built for a profit.
I see, I see. So I understand Mr. Ross was the one who developed Miracle Mile with all the shopping and so forth?
Yes.
And did the homes follow that, or did the homes come before
They kind
the
of
commercial?
were simultaneous.
I see.
And largely there was a large Jewish community in this area because they were excluded from downtown.
So there were covenants on real estate there,
Exactly.
which didn't allow them to live in certain places, but this area did.
That's right.
I was reading
He had the last laugh.
Yeah, and I was reading in the report that actually up to, was it 29% of the Jewish population of the Miracle, was 29% of the Miracle Mile was of Jewish background, correct?
I believe so, yes. I don't remember precisely, but yeah.
Very interesting. Well, let's go into some of the questions that some people have regarding historical preservation, because, you know, there's so many rumors and misinformation about what it means to live in a preservation overlay zone. For instance, describe when they do a survey, when they determine if your house is a contributor or a non-contributor. What does that mean?
Okay, well, that's very nuanced. What happens when you do a decision on whether an area has a contributor or a non-contributor, you look at a variety of things. You look at whether the materials are still there, whether it appears as it did, is it still used as it was. you have to look through things like deferred maintenance and things like that.
Mhm.
Just because a house is aging and isn't kept up as well, you have to make sure that that's not part of what you assess. And some houses, depending upon the size, depending upon the severity of the alterations, can bear some alterations and remain contributors. Others, if too much of the material has been gone for too long, then they become non-contributors.
So if the house has been altered or maybe had some really bad additions through the years, it's not reversible. That's
Yeah.
called a non-contributor.
That's right.
And whatever hasn't been touched, or maybe something that's reversible. Let's say the windows were changed at one time, but somewhere down the line, original windows could be put back in, so
Yes.
that would be a contributor to the area.
Yes, as
And-
long as what they call fenestration, which is the pattern of openings on a building, as long as that's not altered to a point where building it again would be a reconstruction.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Well, a lot of people ask, do I need permission to work on my home? Let's do an example. Let's say someone has a beautiful old home built in the 1920s, English Tudor style home, and the front door is original, but it's really in pretty bad shape. And they want to change out the door and put some door maybe that they find in Home Depot or something. What's the process for that?
Okay, well, the first thing you do anytime you're altering anything that is visible from the street is you contact your planner. The planner puts you on the agenda for the HPOZ meeting.
And the planner is the HPOZ department at the city, correct?
It's city
on the
planning,
city level.
Yes, and
Okay.
every HPOZ has a single representative who deals with their agendas and their cases.
Okay. So it gets put on their agenda, and then what happens after that?
And well, the planner assesses what level of review the project rises to. If it's a small, like a repair, it's delegated. And the planner can say, this is conforming work, it's delegated to me, here is your letter of consent, and you go ahead and put the door in. If they want to make a change, say for example they want to change to a different style of door, or they want a glass door instead of a wooden door, then it goes before the board, and the board discusses it, and they come to a conclusion, and they advise the planner on how they feel like it should be handled. And then the planner signs off once the project is complete according to the way that the board has requested that it be completed.
Okay, so in other words, I want to change my door. I go to the planner, the city, the representative that represents this area.
Yes.
I say, I want to change my door. This is the picture of the door. This is what it looks like. This is my home. They put it on the agenda. And if it's just a minor like repair, or if it does conform to the architectural style, they could give an approval right there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, the planner could give the approval without putting you in front of the board.
And I understand it could be from 1 to 21 days. Is that true?
Yeah.
But a lot of people like simple things like paint color or whatever like that could take maybe as little as 3 days,
A lot of
within
that
a
can
week.
even be done with email, because many of those things are delegated to the planner and they don't have to consult with the board at all.
So simple things like that could be done in a one-step process,
Right.
correct? Right. But let's say that door, like you mentioned, gets changed. They want to change it to a glass door. So the city rep then contacts the local HPOZ board, which there's, correct, 5 members?
That's right.
3, which each HPOZ area has a 5-member HPOZ board, correct? 3 have to be residents, 1 has to be a contractor or real estate person, and 1 has to be an architect, right?
Right.
So you have 5 altogether, correct? Okay. So then that goes to that local board, and they make a decision on that glass door if that is appropriate for that particular house.
Right, and
I
the way
see.
they will make their decision is according to the preservation plan and the Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay, so in the process of creating historical preservation overlay zone, one of the things that we do after we've done outreach and so forth and create a historical survey is we create a historical plan. So it's a booklet based on the national standards of preservation. Is that true?
Right, nationally accepted preservation standards, which is the Secretary of Interior standards.
I see.
Also called the 10 Commandments.
The 10 Commandments.
For preservation.
So that's the framework that we create our preservation plan off of.
That's correct.
I see. Okay, so but I understand, and is this true, like in each historical preservation zone, in the process of creating it, we can tweak and create our own historical preservation plan based on that frame, but maybe we can loosen it here or maybe tighten it there.
Right.
Is that true?
Well, the Secretary of Interior standards are very general, so it would not be something that you would be probably loosening, but you would become more specific.
More specific.
Based on the style of architecture you're dealing with, what historically is significant. Say, for example, your HPOZ is based on the work of a specific architect. The thrust would be very different than if it was based on, say, for example, that it was something to do with a historical event.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kind of things that will guide your preservation plan and make it.
I see. Like, for instance, Hancock Park doesn't require a decision to be made on paint color. So that's one thing they left out of their plan. So there's no decision to be made if someone wants to change the color of their home.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Well, when we were doing our HPOZ, we were kind of on the fence about that because paint color is temporary and it doesn't impact the architecture, and it is something that a person might have strong feelings about.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also some pushback about, well, I don't want to be living next to a maroon house.
Right.
So that was something we kind of struggled with, and we are very, our particular HPOZ is very lenient when it comes to paint, and largely it's delegated. So if a person comes and brings lime green to the planner, you'll kind of guide them against it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have never heard a case about paint.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't want to...
It's kind of one of those things where you reserve the right to control it if it gets out of hand, but by and large, you stay out of the way.
Yeah. Well, we hope that people have good sense not to paint an English Tudor home purple or some outrageous, design with stripes or something. But some people do. So this preserves the integrity of the neighborhood. Because with HPOZ, when you create that for the area, one of the benefits, and correct me if I'm wrong, it stabilizes neighborhoods. Because you know that this neighborhood that you bought into is going to be stable and look similar to the way it was meant to be, the way it was designed from the beginning.
Exactly.
And won't change that much over many years.
That's
And
right.
the other benefit is, because of that stabilization actually increases, studies have found it increases the value of your neighborhood.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And that's the statistics are long-standing that it increases it by approximately 20%. And you have to state this very carefully. An identical house, unprotected, is worth 20% less than a protected house.
Yeah.
When people hear what they want to hear, they think, oh, my house value is going to go up. Well, a rising tide lifts all boats, or it drops them too.
Mhm.
If the whole market is going down, so will an HPOZ.
Yeah, I heard about that study. But of course, that varies with market forces out there, so that
Yeah, but
20%.
it's a 20% edge that you wouldn't have if you were unprotected.
I see. And where did that study come from? Where did you...
That's been a nationwide study many, many, many decades, since the 60s, since the landmark legislation in the 60s.
Oh, very interesting.
And it's held steady, that 20% has held steady.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, okay. Let's go on. We basically covered how is a project reviewed. You mentioned it first goes to the city's rep who reps this area, and they could, delegate it and approve it or not approve it if it's minor changes or simple things within a few days, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if someone says, okay, I want to build a whole nother addition on my home. I want to build a second floor with 2 more bedrooms and 2 baths. So, maybe that's going to cost, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to build that addition to my home that is considered a contributor.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process for that?
Well, now that's when it gets hairy because it's under rather rigid review and there are restrictions. And there are also costs involved because this is what's referred to as certificate work, certificate of compatibility.
Certificate of compatibility you need
Yes,
for that.
or a certificate of appropriateness, depending upon the
Mhm.
level it rises to.
And is that true that's only for additions and projects that are bigger than
Very large,
250
yeah.
square feet?
The things that involve a demolition, a large second-story addition, turning a 1-story house into a 2-story house, things like that is going to be under rather rigid scrutiny. A small addition in the back, say bumping out your kitchen,
Yeah.
anything under 250 is actually delegated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's anything you do towards the back of the house is pretty much, it's not as restricted as people think it might be.
Right, because in a historical preservation overlay zone, we're mostly concerned with the front facade of the home.
Anything that's street visible, not just the front facade.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person says, well, I want to put in a TV room in the back and I'm going to get rid of all my windows, that would need a good think.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is, for example, changes the fenestration
Right.
and it changes the appearance of the house from the street.
So a lot of people say, oh, is my interior affected? But it's not,
The
right?
interior isn't, as long as if you're getting rid of windows, it is.
Yeah.
That's been one of our bugaboos. Is
Yeah,
that
because
people
the
want
win-
a closet and there goes the side windows.
Oh, that would make
So-
sense.
So that's the only thing that would affect it. If it has an impact on the outside that's visible from the street, then there are interior things that would be disturbed.
So we're mostly concerned about if you're walking or driving down the street, whatever you could see on your left and the right of the front facades of the home
Mhm.
and down the driveways, maybe the back garage
Yes,
on some of these
garages are
old
covered,
homes,
yes. Garages are significant
Some
structures.
people might take the garage that happens to match architecturally to the house, and maybe someone turns it into a cement box. That wouldn't be allowed.
That would not be allowed, no.
Right.
The garages are protected, the entire property is protected once the home is designated a contributor.
I see. So the integrity of the area is preserved.
Yes.
I see. So for those big projects, let's say a project costs $300,000 to put like another floor on a home. If it is approved, there is a cost.
Yes.
From the city
And there's-
charges it's
Right,
like a
and it's from
fee.
$750 to, I believe it's $1,700, depending upon the amount of time and effort that's going to be put into it. And if you look on the Historic Resources website,
Mhm.
you'll see that there are fee tables so that you can estimate. There's a flat fee and then there's certain percentages depending.
So let's make that clear for the small items. It's not required a certificate
No.
of compatibility. It's only for projects that are bigger than 250 square feet. That means major additions.
Right. Anything that you do to the outside of your house, though, does need to be approved. You need a permit and you need sign-off. Anything that changes the outside.
Yeah, because a lot of the zoning anyway, whether you have a HPOZ overlay in an area, you still have to abide by the zoning of the
Absolutely.
city. So
That's why they call it an overlay.
it's an overlay. So
Yeah.
it's an overlay to the existing zoning.
Right.
Okay.
So if you're R3, your rights and your usage doesn't change.
Now, what happens, now we talked about contributing homes. So a survey determines if a home is a contributor because it still has its historical integrity. But there are non-contributors, and we talked about that, about a non-contributor being a home that no longer has its historical integrity. Now, let's say a non-contributing homeowner of a non-contributing home wants to do work on their house. What's the guidelines for that?
They still get reviewed, but there's very little that the HPOZ has any power to enforce. They only review it and then are required to sign off on pretty much everything. It's still I believe it's still, you would still need like a certificate of appropriateness or compatibility for an addition on a non-contributor.
I see.
But other alterations, say for example windows, things like that, there's very little the HPOZ can do
Right.
to approve them.
So they're a lot less restrictive.
They are very
Yeah.
much less restrictive, but they still have to go through the process.
Uh-huh.
So
Because it's still in
not,
the area.
Yeah, it's not without impact.
I see. And my understanding is, let's say someone wants to take a non-contributing home that's already been changed and they want to demolish it. That I understand they need a certificate of compatibility and they need a special demolition permit anyway. You need that anyway from the city, correct?
That's right, yes. And there's significant delay involved in that. That could take a couple of months to get approved.
So let's say someone wants to demolish this home, this non-contributor home, and they want to put up a new home. Does that new home have to abide by the general architecture of the area?
Yes, the new home is under complete review.
Okay. So if the area is mostly, like our area is a lot of English revival, French Normandy revival, Mediterranean and Spanish revival, the new home would have to be in the style of one of those.
Actually, that is not the case. The
No?
thing that you look for is massing, scale, the fenestration patterns, but that's all. So you can actually drop a modern home in the middle of a block and it would pass according to the design review standards.
Okay,
And in
as
fact,
long
the
as it's-
Secretary of Interior Standards is very clear that fake old
Yeah.
is not recommended
Not
at all.
necessarily good.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you can put a modern home
Right,
on an infill lot
yes.
or a home that's a non-contributor that's been demolished. It can be modern, but the size and stamp on the land has to
Yeah, for
comply
example.
with the rest of the homes. Not like these big McMansions that we're having now
Right. Well,
and moving into the area.
What happens with neighborhoods over time is sometimes the zoning changes. The houses that were built in the 20s might have a 30-foot setback. But zoning now, if a home were demolished and it weren't historically protected, the setback might be 15 feet.
I
Well,
see.
you could actually, in an HPOZ, you could actually enforce a 30-foot setback because building a new home 15 feet forward of the other homes has an impact on that's
The rest of the
negative.
historical homes.
And that's where the design review is helpful when it comes to infill buildings, even though it's not, you don't have total control. You still have a great deal of control that mitigates some of the negative things that can happen.
I see. Well, let me ask you this. What are the standards? What are some of the standards that you would use based on the national standards for historical preservation? Like, give me some examples, what you're looking for when people change or alter something on the front of their home.
Okay, you're not
Like
supposed-
windows, go ahead.
In a nutshell,
Yeah.
if it's there, don't remove it.
Mhm.
If it was never there, don't stick it on the front. You know, it's like crazy glue. You can do so amazing. No,
Right.
you don't do that. Anything that is new needs to be differentiated. You have to be able to say, 50 years down the road, look at it and say, and this is what they did to it in the 50s. And that's part of its, that's part of how it retains its historic character, because buildings do change over time, but fake olding it is not recommended. You have to differentiate. That's very clear in the Secretary of Interior standards. And it's something we struggle with because it's like, you could make a seamless match, except that you can't.
Right.
So getting a subtle differentiation can be tricky.
So it's better to, like, if you have an old door that's a little battered, it's better to repair it. When you say and restore it,
Always repair first.
repair
Always,
first.
yeah.
You have a window that's a little loose, the framing, it's better to bring in a workman to repair the window
Definitely.
casing and preserve, like on a Victorian home. We don't have many Victorian homes in this area.
No.
I don't think we have any, but I mean, all that beautiful gingerbread, that would all be, don't touch it.
That's right. If it's there, leave it there, and if it isn't there, don't put it there.
All right, in the process of creating a historical preservation overlay zone, as we mentioned before, there's a 5-member board that's created to oversee the area and work with the city's representative in their HPOZ unit. So tell me about that 5-member board
Well, the 5-member board.
and how they're elected.
Well, the way it works is the mayor appoints one person,
Mm-hmm.
cultural heritage appoints 2 people,
Mm-hmm.
one of whom is the architect.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done a pretty good job of finding, highly qualified architects. And the other 3 all have to know something about either building or history or planning, or they have to have something that qualifies them. And what we found on our board is we each kind of have a little bit of a specialty. And so when we work as a team,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of sharing a brain. It
Mhm.
all works really well.
I see. And I understand this HPOZ board in each HPOZ zone meets twice a month, correct?
Yes.
So any projects that people have goes through the city, which is then referred to the board.
Right.
And if it's a question of something that has to be voted on, let's say that glass door that you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
that the board would then vote on it.
Yes.
And then the city would then say yes or no, correct?
Well, the city actually abides by anything that the board votes on.
Okay.
And, as long as we're within our legal bounds,
Mhm.
sometimes it's easy to want to overstep, if
Mhm.
somebody's, especially if somebody's kind of pulled a fast one already.
Right, right.
But.
And those are all open to the public because of the Brown Act, correct?
That's correct, yes.
That's right. So when you were creating the HPOZ board in your area, did you have people from your district that wanted to participate in that?
Yeah, we actually had kind of an embarrassment of riches. We had, 2 architects, which
Mhm.
was very good. And then we had a couple of people who'd been very active in the neighborhood for many years. They understood the neighborhood thoroughly and they had a total grasp of the history.
Mm-hmm.
That worked out really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, well, that's...
it's not out of the question to get someone from outside though.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's
So you need a
helpful.
good architect or...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to know, someone needs to know land use, like a
Yes.
realtor,
Right.
or maybe, a contractor knows building
Right.
permits and all of that.
It's the hardest seat to fill is the real estate seat, because the person who takes that seat actually can't do business in the area because of conflict of interest.
Oh, interesting.
So that's actually one of the trickiest spots.
Yeah, because
So-
there's a realtor on every street.
That's right.
Okay. Well, what happens if someone disagrees with a decision of an HPOZ board? Let's say that person with that glass door says, no, I don't agree. I think that glass door is transparent and it won't matter each way that,
They can
it doesn't...
go to the central area, the Area Planning Commission, APC,
Mhm.
with an appeal, but usually the APC supports planning.
Mhm.
And if planning supports the decision of the HPOZ board,
Mhm.
it's not likely that the appeal will go anywhere, but there is an appeal process.
I see.
It's just not very successful, unfortunately, for some people.
Okay. And how long did it take you to create your HPOZ in your area?
About 2 years.
2
It was
years.
different time then.
Mhm.
This staffing was different. Ours was actually designated the same day as the big crash.
Mhm.
The same day. So everything changed overnight. And it was, all of a sudden, it was much, much harder to get an HPOZ through because there was no planning staff to
Yeah.
administer it. So-
You know what I found so interesting is that when the historical survey was done recently for this area, that Robby took my house and kind of gave me a walkthrough of the history of my own home. And I found out that my home was built in 1925 by a pretty well-known architect, and it was built for $7,000. And I just found that fascinating. I can't wait to look into it further. Actually, when we have larger outreach events coming up, we're going to have the historical survey for people to see, and you'll also be able to see the profile of your particular home. And that's called a DPR form.
Yes,
A DPR stands for,
Department of Parks and Recreation.
yeah, so it's going to be like a little bio of your home. Could you imagine that, with a little bit of a, maybe who designed it? They do the research by finding out all the permits that were done on that property. It's fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the architectural historians from ARG, they go through and they take a look at every detail on the building. Like, they'll walk around and they'll tell you exactly what kind of windows are there, what kind of roof it is, what it's covered with, what the cement's like, what the concrete's like on the front steps, everything. So you get a real detailed snapshot with a description that an architectural historian this is what they're looking for, what they're looking
Wow.
at. So it gets really interesting.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. Now tell me something. What happens if someone doesn't comply? We were just talking about that the other day. What happens if someone says, well, you know what, I want to do what I want to do. You made that decision, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
What happens with that?
Well, this has always been a bit of a rough spot. The people who live in the area where it's designated are the eyes and ears of LADBS. And LADBS is complaint driven. They don't drive around looking for things like, how did that happen?
And LADBS is?
Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety.
Okay.
And they do all the inspections, and they also enforce HPOZs. But of course, HPOZ is pretty far down on their list because they're inspecting buildings for safety.
New construction.
New construction and buildings that, like illegal use and stuff. HPOZ is not a land use thing. And it has to do with keeping people safe. So, of course, everything kind of gets, you kind of get short shrift when you're in HPOZ, and that's something that HPOZ people complain about all the time. But the only way that you can actually maintain an HPOZ is if you have the moral fiber to contact LADBS when you see something that's happening that's not correct. Like if you see somebody demolishing something or tearing all the stucco off of their house or tearing the front steps of their front porch off or putting in vinyl windows, you have to call LADBS, and it goes down hard. There's that schoolyard, don't be a tattletale. But then if you've gone through it like the way we did, and you've made promises and you say, this is how it's going to work, do you want it, yes or no, and we have total support, then failing to enforce is not keeping the promise that we made.
Not keeping the promise,
we just have to do it. We don't like it.
Yeah.
But, and there's material that you can get from the city that also you can hand to people. You can hand them copies of the preservation plan. You can hand them the pamphlets that get put up. Because some people just don't know.
And I understand the HPOZ board, that 5-member board in your area, is also a good place for resources. Like is it true that, like if you need resources to, let's say you want to change out your windows and you want to get original windows, well, these vendors and, these people deal with restoration work for doors, for windows, for this, that.
The planning department actually has a very long list of that.
Oh, the planning department does.
As board members, this is really paranoid, but as board members, there's two things that you have to bear in mind. If you give someone advice and they take it, presuming that you have authority and you act unilaterally, that is not appropriate. They think that because they've come to a board member, that they've got permission. The thing to do when a person says, I want to do this, what do I do next? You send them directly to the planner.
Directly to the planner, right, on the city side.
Yes, because once you give advice, first of all, if you do give them advice, you're liable for, suppose the guy burns the house down doing a torch down roof. There's these kind of things.
Right.
And also, there's a conflict. So when this person comes before the board and you've already had a conversation and you've told them, well, I think you should do this, then you have to recuse yourself. And so they lose somebody who is their representative who should be on their side. So you have to maintain this distance. And that's very tricky because, it's like, I don't want to talk to you about your project. That sounds harsh. But the fact is, if you just explain, I can't tell you specifics about your project, but I can tell you the general process, and I can tell you what we have done in the past with cases like this, and I can tell you what phone number to call and whose email you need in order to start the process.
So anyone that wants to make any kind of alteration on their home in a historical preservation overlay zone, they always get referred to the city side
Planning for this.
rep who handles the HPOZ for our area.
Right.
And it is only the board, the local board, that makes a decision if the city says, okay, go back and make a decision on a particular project.
The board advises planning
Mhm.
on what to sign off.
Right. So anything with resources, let's say someone says, you know what, I want to change my old windows and I want to abide by the plan, we send them to the city rep,
Planning.
and they have the resources
Yes.
on their list that they could go to and say,
Absolutely.
hey,
And
these,
of course, their library is huge too,
It's
because
huge.
they hear hundreds of these cases, so they know about this contractor and that contractor. You know, don't do this and try this guy, and you know, this one has a good price.
Mhm.
They know all kind of stuff
I
that
see.
an ordinary person would take years to figure out.
And you know, Robby, the way I look at it too, you know, a lot of people ask, oh my God, this is such a pain and this and that. But you know what? It is a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice that we all make, because when we look to preserve a particular area of the city, we not only do it for our generation, we're doing it for generations to come. Because if you look at the beautiful old world cities like Paris and Rome and London and so forth, and Barcelona, why do we travel there? We travel to see the past.
Yeah.
And if we destroy our past here in Los Angeles, we have nothing. We don't have our roots, and people that come to see Los Angeles it would be so sad
That's
they will
true.
not be able to see the once graceful neighborhoods, charming
That's right.
neighborhoods that once existed.
But
here.
also, altruism aside, it's a good investment. It's just a good investment. Our own neighborhood had some houses that looked like they could almost fall down.
Mhm.
Every one of them has been restored. And now our block is a National Register district.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened if we'd said, let's put this forward for National Register back when the HPOZ first started,
Mhm.
because there was too much dereliction.
Yeah.
And that just went away like overnight. Even though when we were designated, it was the beginning of a depression.
Mhm.
People still painted their houses, and they still started keeping them. There was a sense of pride.
Sense of pride.
And
yeah.
and since then, you know, we recovered from the crash much, much more quickly
Mhm.
than we would have otherwise.
So every time a home is sold and turned over,
Mhm.
and people make improvements on their home, each home is lifted up
That's true.
from maybe being a blighted home to a home that's restored back to its original
Right.
beauty. So overall, it increases the value of the entire neighborhood.
It's true. And another thing that happens is as HPOZ matures a little bit. You know,
Mhm.
the first people it was, you can have, I didn't want this in the first place. And other people say, I did want this. But then as people sell and new people move in, they automatically agree by buying in that neighborhood that I'm going to abide by these rules.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, you forced this on me, now, you know, there's no force after a few years and a few turnovers of properties.
Mhm.
And so you find that people all of a sudden are looking to buy in your neighborhood because it's historic.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a supply and demand element there.
Mhm.
There are certain things about a historic district that cannot be replicated elsewhere. And people realize that it has a certain intrinsic value of its own.
Like I mentioned before, it eventually stabilizes neighborhoods, and people that move into an area want to know, oh my God, I'm going to be living in this neighborhood for maybe 20, 30 years, and now I know I'm going to be buying into this historical preservation overlay zone.
Mhm.
I know that, you know, the house next door to me probably will not be demolished and a big McMansion
That's
put
true.
on top of it.
And
It-
that
it-
stability is valuable right there.
Very
to,
valuable.
To a new buyer or a person who really
Mhm.
wants to establish roots and stay for the long run. which is another thing that makes people do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's why as a community, I always feel that we have to come together, and even though there are some sacrifices to be made in a historical preservation overlay zone, it's good for the best of the whole community, not just our area, but for the city as a whole. Well, thank you so much for being here and answering some of our questions. It really, I know it's a long process to create a historical preservation overlay zone. There's a lot of more questions probably that maybe I haven't addressed or asked you, but I want to thank you so much for coming here and being part of the historical survey, and I can't wait to see the profiles on each property. I mean, if you're a history buff and you're really into LA history, I mean, you're going to be blown away when you see this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.